The envelope carried the unmistakable logo of the Cedar Ridge Homeowners Association, printed in bold navy ink. Anyone who lived in our neighborhood knew what that meant. Another complaint, another rule, another demand. I sighed and opened it while standing at my kitchen counter. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Notice of violation. My eyes skimmed down the page until I reached the amount. Fine. $5,000. I blinked. $5,000. For a garden. The official wording read, "Your front yard landscaping has been deemed non-compliant with HOA aesthetic guidelines. The garden is considered visually disruptive and inconsistent with neighborhood standards." In simple terms, they thought my garden was ugly. I leaned against the counter and laughed. Not because it was funny. Because the alternative was getting angry. The garden. My garden wasn't typical. Most houses in Cedar Ridge had identical lawns. Trimmed grass, 2 rose bushes, maybe a decorative rock. Perfect. Predictable. Boring. Mine was different. My front yard looked like something from another era. Instead of smooth green grass, I had native prairie plants, winding stone paths, and clusters of wildflowers. Blue lupins. Golden coneflowers. Tall purple blazing stars. The centerpiece was an old oak tree surrounded by hand-placed limestone slabs. Beneath it stood a small wooden sign that read, "Pollinator Habitat." Bees loved it. Butterflies loved it. Birds nested in the shrubs. Kids from down the street sometimes stopped to watch the hummingbirds. But the HOA hated it. And the person who hated it most was Denise Caldwell, the HOA president. Denise believed Cedar Ridge should look like a magazine cover. And my garden ruined her picture. The confrontation. 2 hours after reading the letter, Denise showed up. Of course she did. She marched up my driveway wearing oversized sunglasses and carrying a clipboard like it was a weapon. "A deal," she said, not bothering with hello. "You received the notice." I did. She nodded toward my yard. "You'll need to remove all of this." "All of what?" She gestured dramatically. "The weeds." I stared at her. "Those weeds are native plants." She sighed like I'd just proven her point. "This isn't a nature preserve. It's a residential neighborhood." I crossed my arms. "They're drought resistant. They support pollinators." She flipped through her clipboard. "They also violate HOA landscaping standards. And that costs $5,000. It will increase if not corrected." Classic Denise. Threat first. Reason later. Why the garden existed. What Denise didn't know was why the garden existed. This yard had looked completely different 5 years earlier. Back then it was just grass. Perfect HOA grass. But when my grandfather passed away, I inherited something unexpected. A box of old journals. My grandfather had grown up in this area long before Cedar Ridge existed. Before the paved roads. Before the houses. Before the HOA. In his journals he described the land as it once was. A natural prairie filled with wildflowers. Oak trees scattered across rolling grass. Bees everywhere. He used to say, "The land remembers what it used to be." That's why I changed the yard. Not to annoy the HOA. But to bring a small piece of that prairie back. Denise escalates. 3 days later, another letter arrived. This one was worse. Final notice. Immediate correction required. The fine had doubled. $5,000 due within 10 days. Failure to comply could result in additional penalties. I walked outside holding the letter. Denise was already standing across the street with 2 HOA board members. They were literally taking photos of my garden. I waved the letter. "You serious about this?" Denise crossed her arms. "We gave you time. It's been 3 days. That's plenty." One of the board members whispered something to her. She smirked. "You know," she said, "we've received multiple complaints." "From who?" "Residents who care about property values." Ah, the famous HOA phrase, property values. As if butterflies were crashing the housing market. An unexpected visitor. That afternoon, while I was watering the plants, a white pickup truck pulled up. The door had a logo on it. City Historical Preservation Office. 2 people stepped out. A man and a woman carrying cameras. "You the homeowner?" the man asked. "Yes." He looked at my garden and smiled. "This is incredible." That was not the reaction I expected. He introduced himself as Mark Hernandez, an urban historian. The woman was a botanist named Lena Park. They explained that someone had reported a rare cluster of native prairie species growing in a residential yard. When they saw my garden, their excitement doubled. Do you realize what you have here? Dr. Park asked. Flowers. She laughed. Some of these species barely exist inside city limits anymore. She pointed toward the tall purple flowers. That's Liatris pycnostachya, prairie blazing star. Then to the yellow ones. Those are Ratibeda pinnata. Apparently, my weeds were something special. The discovery. Mark walked slowly around the yard, taking photos. Then he stopped near the oak tree. Where did you get these stones? He asked. Found them buried while digging. He crouched down, then brushed dirt off one of them. His expression changed instantly. Hold on. He pulled out his phone and called someone. Within an hour, 2 more city vehicles arrived. And suddenly my front yard looked like a mini archaeological site. Turns out those limestone slabs weren't random. They were remnants of a 19th century homestead foundation. Right under my garden. According to Mark, the area had once been part of an early settlement farm from the 1870s. Most of it had been bulldozed during suburban development. Except this one tiny piece. My yard. The next morning, at 9 a.m., I heard commotion outside. Denise again. But this time she wasn't alone. She'd brought a landscaping crew. A truck, 2 workers, and a lawn mower. I walked outside. What's this? Denise smiled. You didn't correct the violation. The HOA is authorized to restore the lawn. You're not touching anything. She waved toward the workers. Remove it. One of them stepped toward the garden. Right then, a city SUV pulled up. Mark jumped out holding paperwork. Stop. Everyone froze. Denise frowned. And you are? City Historical Preservation Office. He handed her a document. This property is now under temporary protection review. Denise blinked. What? Mark pointed to the yard. This site may contain historically significant structures and rare native plant clusters. Dr. Park added calmly. Removing anything could violate city conservation law. The landscaping crew slowly backed away. Denise loses it. Denise looked like her brain had short-circuited. This is ridiculous, she snapped. It's a messy yard. Mark smiled politely. Actually, it may be one of the last preserved micro-prairie habitats in the city. Dr. Park added, and potentially worth $500,000 in preservation grants. Denise's sunglasses slipped down her nose. $500,000. Mark nodded. If designated a historic environmental site. I almost laughed out loud. Yesterday, $5,000 fine for being ugly. Today, $500,000 historic landmark candidate. The HOA meeting. That evening, Denise called an emergency HOA meeting. The entire neighborhood showed up. She stood at the front holding her clipboard like usual. But her confidence was gone. A misunderstanding occurred, she began. Someone in the back asked, about the garden. She cleared her throat. The property may have historical value. I stood up. Mark and Dr. Park had already confirmed it. The garden sat on preserved prairie soil. And the stone foundation belonged to a documented pioneer homestead. The city had already started paperwork for landmark status. Denise forced a smile. The HOA always supports historical preservation. I raised the fine notice. Then you probably want to cancel this. The room got quiet. Denise slowly took the paper and ripped it in half. The news spread. 2 weeks later, the local newspaper ran a story. Suburban yard reveals rare prairie and 1870s homestead remains. Photos of my garden were everywhere. Butterflies, wildflowers, the oak tree. Kids from the neighborhood started visiting again. Except now their parents came too. Even people from other parts of the city showed up. Apparently, seeing a real prairie ecosystem in the middle of suburbia was rare. The landmark. Exactly 1 month later, the city council made it official. My property received a designation. Historic Prairie Preservation Site. Estimated cultural and ecological value. $500,000. The city even installed a small plaque near the oak tree. It read, "This site preserves native prairie plants and remnants of an 1870s homestead foundation." My grandfather would have loved it. Denise's final visit. A week after the announcement, Denise walked up my driveway again. No sunglasses this time. No clipboard either. She looked uncomfortable. "I came to congratulate you," she said. I nodded. "Thanks." She glanced at the plaque. "And apologize." That surprised me. The HOA may have been overly strict about bees. She gave a small smile. Yes. Then she added quietly, you increased property values after all. I laughed. I tried telling you. The irony. These days, the HOA newsletter includes a new section. Cedar Ridge Historic Garden. They now encourage residents to plant native flowers. Denise even started a pollinator program. Sometimes I catch her standing at the edge of my yard watching butterflies. The same garden she once called ugly. The best part, every spring, the prairie blooms again. Purple, gold, blue, bees buzzing, butterflies drifting through the air. And beneath the oak tree, the old limestone stones sit quietly. A reminder that the land remembers. Even when HOAs forget.